Shalom, y'all. What's up, Patreon? Let's see. I'm doing this new thing now where the camera shot is not appropriate before I start. Then I play with the camera for a little bit because it's highly professional around here. Leap Back asked, leap back? Like if you almost step on a camel spider and you leap back? Roles and responsibilities of members of the tribe. Who makes decisions for the tribe? How much land per person to feed, sanitation, etc. So, this is a multi-tiered question here. And probably the answers, to really flesh out the answers to all these questions is quite involved. And so what I'll do is give you my opinion of the 30,000 foot elevation overview of these concepts. So roles and responsibilities of the members of the tribe. Well, first and foremost is one that I think everybody thinks about, but very few people are actually versed in. Most people operate in the realm of hypothetical on this, and then even those who don't operate in hypotheticals, who operate in actuality on this, still need to train more, is security. Every able-bodied human being in your group should be able to shoulder a rifle and fire it accurately, I'd say out to 100 yards. Change a magazine, clear a malfunction, break the weapon down, disassemble it, clean it, put it back together again, as a bare minimum. Now that doesn't mean that everybody is a soldier, and it certainly doesn't mean that everybody is going to be engaged in warfare. It's my hope that nobody's engaged in warfare, but sometimes you need to speak softly and carry a big stick. Sometimes you do need to be the iron fist inside the velvet glove, right? So you need to have the capability to go there, and I think because of who I am, the way I carry myself, it's just become a credo for me that you shouldn't hide the fact that you can go there. Let it be known. Hey man, I don't want to be your worst enemy, but I will be if I have to be, right? I'm a much better friend than an enemy. I can go there if I need to. I don't want to go there, but I can go there if I need to, right? And so whether that's, an element of command presence for your tribe, the way that you carry yourself, the way that you interact with other people, being squared away or whatever. Security, you need a security team, and that security team needs protocols. They need all the things. They need to train together. They need to know each other, have context with each other, know how the others move, how they communicate, so forth and so on, right? And we could spend 18 hours just on that. There's a lot there. If you're looking for written resource for that, you might check out the Mountain Gorilla blog. I think that's what it's called. It's Mosby's blog. Check that out. He communicates in written form. Me, not so much. I tend to flap my gums. So there's a lot of good reading there, and a lot of that reading revolves around soldiering, which is a facsimile of or a near cousin to the security roles that your people should be well versed in, okay? Next from there is, in my mind, you need the warrior class, and the warrior class is supported by the agricultural class, right? The agricultural class is going to be the people who grow the food that the warriors are protecting in the first place. So food production is key. You got to have it, And I'm not saying it's more important or less important than security, because I think they're equal opposites. You got to have both, right? This to me is the militant farmer concept that I've discussed here before, is that you need to be able to grow your own food, and you need to be able to defend the food that you're growing and the people that you're growing it for. So food production, not just consumption, but production. And we've talked at length here about the mindset shift from consumer to producer. Get to the point where you're producing your own inputs, not just consuming inputs from the system. Because we all, to one degree or another, have a conviction that the system is going to go away, right? And again, we could be here for days. Escape comes naturally in Brown County. I wonder how many like escaped fugitives there are in Brown County. That'd be funny. Actually, statistically, based upon the population density, the per capita escapee in Brown County is like, it's 8 times the national average. Aha, escape comes naturally. Sorry, shiny object syndrome. So, militant farmer, right? You got to be able to grow food, and you got to be able to protect the food that you grow. So, agriculturally speaking, and I'm telling you guys, the vast majority of people just absolutely take for granted the skills required to make food come up out of the earth. I mean, we're told in Genesis, no longer is the earth just going to yield to you. You'll earn your food by the sweat of your brow, right? Paraphrasing there. So you need to be able to grow food. And you also, in the interim, just need a robust stockpile of food. I'll just remind you, Florida, 38 people, 100 pounds per day. It's about 2.5 pounds of food per person per day. So if you're playing along in the home game, if you had a crew of 38 people, which we had the MAG here recently, we were pushing that. We were definitely pushing that. We're probably in the neighborhood of 30 people. Listen, you're talking 3 buckets of food a day. And so if you have 100 buckets of food put up, that's awesome. That's a month's worth of food, not a year's worth, right? And so really double and triple down on those calculations for, and this is, don't get overwhelmed too. If you're brand new to this, you take care of you and yours first, okay? But then from there, we tend to draw our circles bigger and bigger, right? So from there, start expanding those circles and think about, well, what happens if Uncle Bob comes and he brings Aunt Sally? Okay, well, that's another 50 buckets of food a year I ought to have. Where's that coming from? So forth and so on, right? So security and food, absolutely. I think it's good to have a tinkerer, like somebody who's like a MacGyver, who you can hand a roll of duct tape and a pack of chewing gum to, and they can build you whatever you want, right? And within that vein of tinkerer, there's everything. You know, you have your engineering type people, your construction type people, your traditional trades type people, blacksmiths, you know, things of that nature. You need people who are good with their hands. And a basic concept here is that like square, plumb, and level is universal. It doesn't matter if you're framing a house or pouring a foundation or felling a tree or whatever. It's the same math. It's square, plumb, and level. So I do think that there's bleed over in a good way between a lot of trades, because it's Musashi and the 5 rings, man. When you know the way broadly, you see the way in all things, right? So it's kind of the same thing. So people that are good with their hands, the visceral, physical, tactile people, good. And why do you need those? Because there's roles to be filled of maintaining things, of keeping things up. I mean, just think about the role of an armorer, depending on how many people you have. Who's your gunsmith? Who knows the difference between an AR-15 bolt and M16 bolt, and which ones you can run? You know, this works in this gun, that won't work in that gun, and this is a commercial buffer tube, and that's a mil spec, and this is a blah blah blah, right? So forth and so on. Well, see, this gas block is pinned on, and that's going to be a problem because yada yada yada. Okay. So somebody who's your maintenance man or maintenance woman. Something that we've talked about a good bit here is, although not by name, is the auxiliary of the tribe. That when people those who aren't directly tied into the producing of food and the fighting of engagements, right? Defending the homestead per se, you know, keeping the wolves at bay. That's all dependent upon a support structure. Like, who mends the socks? You know, who's weeding the gardens, who's watching the kids, who's preaching on Saturday or Sunday, depending on who you are and what you believe and your convictions are? Who's doing all of these things, and who fills those roles? And then, you know, as far as responsibilities, I think to sum it up across the board is your responsibility is to your Creator first, and then I would say to yourself second, so that you can operate from a position of strength to bless your family third, your wife and your children, and then fourth, your outer ring from there is going to be your immediate crew, and then the tribe at large. And not because your crew is any more important than your tribe. In fact, the well-being of the tribe actually trumps the well-being of the individual in a lot of cases, because a strong tribe, and this is the dichotomy, check, a strong tribe absolutely requires strong individuals, and strong individuals can create a strong tribe. So it's finding the balance there between self and greater self, you know, greater than one's self. But your responsibilities, man, you do what you can, do what's in front of you, and if something is found lacking, either you can't get it done or we need more people or whatever, figure it out. There's no clear cut and dry answer to any of this. This is why you should start doing this now. Again, the idea that on the worst day of your life, you're going to form a highly functional team that flows and works together seamlessly in the midst of chaos. No. Chaos has bested many a good team. Good teams that have trained together, that have shed blood together, that have cried together, that have poured gallons of sweat on the dirt next to each other. Chaos has bested those teams. Who are we? How much hubris could we possibly have to think that, oh, we'll just figure it out on the worst day of our lives? Yeah, I don't think so, man. So you should be doing this with your team now so that you can figure out what these roles and responsibilities are. And to that end, we've talked about this before at this channel, that you put people in the roles that they're best suited for, as long as there's not an immediate need somewhere else. Okay, and we're just going to sum it up with that. Who makes decisions for the tribe? That depends on the size of the tribe and what everybody more or less agrees to, and how did it start in the first place. I think most tribes are patriarchal, and there's one or a few strong men in the group that are kind of the leaders of either a subset of the tribe or the tribe at large. And in my mind, I think that you have like a spiritual leader and a war chief, and then the tribe leader, right? And then maybe a representative from the women and a representative from the men, for a total of 5. And you're looking for a 3/5 majority on anything that's not critical. And some of them get to play the trump card. If the war chief says, listen, if we don't do this in the next 90 minutes, we won't have anything else to argue about because we'll be dead, his authority trumps everybody else. And then it becomes the chieftain's responsibility to execute based upon his advice, the war chief's advice, to deal with the situation. If the spiritual leader says, I've been knocked to my knees and I've had a vision and this is what we were supposed to do, okay, right? And naturally don't abuse the privilege. Nobody abuses the privilege, which is why it's good to have context between each other to know that, you know, this isn't Bob pretending to have visions again. No, this is real, or whatever. And then as far as a representative for the men and a representative for the women, I think that's fair so that everybody has a dog in the hunt. You know, everybody has some representation. But again, completely spitballing here. I don't think majority should rule, because majority tends to be a group of individuals who are all looking out for their individualistic needs. And again, at some point in a lot of cases, the tribe has to trump the needs of an individual for the betterment of the whole. And again, we could spend forever talking about that, but I think that you need some type of council or tribunal or something figured out now, some type of system now. And I do think that key people should have veto power. I'm not doing that. Well, why, T? Because I just feel in my gut it's dangerous and it's going to get us killed. Well, believe me, I'm telling you, I have a bone deep conviction. I'm not doing that. Okay, now what? I don't know. That's something that we should figure out now. Do we take that under advisement? Do I not go along? What happens if I don't go along and everybody gets killed? Okay, that's a problem. What happens if I don't go along and everything works out fine? That's a problem too, because if it was going to work out fine, I probably should have been involved in the first place, right? So how do you navigate those complex issues? Again, having context with people and getting good at talking about those things now, where it's all theoretical, it's all hypothetical now. Moving on, how much land per person to feed? That depends on what you're planting. 200 square foot of potatoes, approximating a 50% yield, will grow about 80,000 calories per the Ice Age Farmer forums. 80,000 calories in 200 square feet. You need about 1 million calories per year per person. For a healthy adult male who's physically active, it's more like 1.3 million. We'll just call it 1 million on average, because you know, toddlers don't eat as much as full-grown men do, and older people don't eat as much, and so forth and so on. So call it 1 million. Well, 1 million divided by 80,000 calories in 200 square feet works out to 12.5. So you would need 12.5 plots at 200 square feet, which would be 2,500 square foot of potatoes, just potatoes. Now, I love potatoes. I don't want to eat just potatoes. I'm good, man. I'm good. Talk about food boredom. Now, you could make French fries. You could make, potatoes au gratin. You could make poutine. There's all kinds of things you could do with potatoes, right? Whatever. Chips, baked potato, mashed potatoes. You got, shrimp gumbo, shrimp salad, shrimp. Yeah, you guys get the point. But at some point, it's like, man, screw these potatoes, I'm out. So I think it's better to double or triple that figure. We'll say we just doubled it. That's 5,000 square feet. There's 40,000 square feet in an acre, so that's 1/8 of an acre per person per year, assuming a 50% yield. Again, you should start doing this now, because 1/8 of an acre doesn't sound that big until the balloon's gone up and there's no electricity and you can't get gas for your tiller and you've never planted anything before and you don't have any seed potatoes either. Also, there's been some great study. Bug Out Bubba has a video on YouTube that actually talked about this, that the caloric, most of the seeds that are in these survival seed vaults actually put you into a caloric deficit, because they take more calories to plant and reap than you will gain from planting them and eating them. That's an issue. So at least 1/8 of an acre per person per year. You'd probably be better to go with 1/4 of an acre per person per year for all of your calories. Now, you can have calorie on the hoof or on the wing. We do. And the great thing about that is you don't really have to worry about it rotting. Just when you need the meat, you process an animal. So permaculture, you should start doing it now. Not when it matters, but now, because you're gonna make mistakes. Things are gonna happen. It could get sideways for you. Sanitation. Dig some holes, poop in them, put an outhouse over the top, get you your 5-gallon buckets and a pallet of peat moss for your composting toilet, and have a humanure pile, and shavings or leaves that you're going to add to that pile to keep the smell down. And then what are you going to do with that? Now you're making compost, and you add that into your other compost for your garden, which grows vegetables and grows fodder for your animals, which feed you as well. And loops, closed loops. We've talked about this to an end and multiple times here. Not just where you're going to poop, but who's going to draw water that's necessary for sanitation. Where does it come from? Do we need to boil it? We probably need to boil it. Who knows? I hope not, because that's a lot of wasted time, calories, and energy, but you might need to boil it. Okay, so who's going to do that? And why are we boiling it? To kill the Giardia and Cryptosporidium and everything else that's in there that I don't really want to. I don't want to die from pooping myself to death. Okay, cool. So we do that, right? And then what's your hand washing protocol? And where's all the stuff? Who's stocking all the stuff? So forth and so on. So yeah, you need to get that figured out. And the best way to get that figured out would be to get your tribe together and say, who's stocking this stuff? How much do you have? Who's going to be in charge of this? Bob, great news. Bob, you're in charge of this. And we're going to need you to, Bob, you are our bleach guy, fully understanding that bleach only has a shelf life of 6 to 12 months. So you're also our pool shock guy. And then because that's going to become an issue at some point, you're going to work with Steven from the office, and you're going to distill some ethanol truck fuel that we can use for disinfecting as well, and so forth and so on. And see, sanitation also ties into medical, because you need to sanitize or disinfect wounds. And so who's going to do that? And these are all great questions, and we could camp on this forever. But the long and short of it is, these are the kinds of things that work themselves out when you get a group of people together and you start talking about it. So I'd really encourage you to get a group of people together and start talking about it. Because these things will flesh themselves out pretty quickly. A good rule of thumb is the good idea fairy. When somebody's like, hey, we should have a, you're right, Steven. We're gonna, look, you see him? Look, he's got a cute little tie on and everything. Aspen put this in my pocket, and I thought this would make a great cameo. might even just keep him around a little bit. When somebody makes a suggestion, that's a great idea, Steven. You're in charge of that. You find out pretty quick just how much of a necessity it was, or if it's just somebody flapping their gums because they want to add to the conversation. Hey, we should, I love that idea. You're in charge of that. Well, I didn't mean, okay, then we're not doing it. Right? So you do that 2, 3, 10 times. All of a sudden, nobody's throwing out ideas for the sake of throwing out ideas. They're only speaking up when it makes sense to do so, because they understand that you're not going to do it for them. They're going to have to shoulder that burden, or, you know, at the very least, we'll do it together. But I'm not just going to let you run the show by coming up with great ideas all the time. So, roles and responsibilities of members of the tribe. Get in where you can fit in, man, and then have you a mag meeting, have you a tribe meeting, and sit down and everybody talk to each other. You need strong leadership, you need a good auxiliary, you need security, you need the ability to produce food, you need the ability to process that food in a healthy, sanitized way. There's a reason people coalesce into groups, because there's too much for one man to do. There's too much for one woman to do. It's too much. We would have never made it this far in society if we didn't make use of the teamwork function of many hands make light work. There's just too much to do otherwise. So that's really my thoughts on that. Shalom.